Welcome back to the PMR podcast. My name is Andrew. I'm an addict and an alcoholic. This is episode 21. Really excited for this episode, and thanks for tuning in.
Welcome back. Extremely excited. My name is Mitch. I'm an alcoholic addict, and today we have a very special guest. His name is Dan Karaty. He's had his hand in a lot of things. He was gracious enough to bring us on his podcast a couple weeks ago, which is called "If I'm Being Honest." And he is one of us. He's in recovery, and before getting into all of that and him talking on that, he has worked on things such as X Factor, So You Think You Can Dance, and America's Got Talent, which are all shows that I love watching growing up. And we were just kind of talking about how awesome that was that he has his hand in that then and to an extent now too. But Dan, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm Dan, alcoholic, and happy to be on here today. Talk to you guys. Thanks for the nice intro.
Of course. Yeah, I was super excited when Andrew first texted me that he was going on yours and was talking to me about it. And when we ended up meeting on Zoom the first time, I always get excited when I hear about people wanting to be open and sharing their recovery. I think that for me, that's just like amazing, and I can't thank you enough for doing that. Like, especially with kind of the platform that you have and the impact that you have been making and could potentially make. That's I can't even thank you doesn't even really cover it. So we're super excited to have you as a guest on our podcast now.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to sharing my story with you guys because having you guys on my podcast and just kind of giving you the floor and just kind of letting you rip and tell your stories. A lot of the times I just have like just a back and forth conversation with people about random things in life, on my podcast. But you guys, I asked you to come on and just tell me your story, like you would in a meeting. And I haven't done that on my podcast before. And I was sitting there listening to you guys just relating to so much, and it brought me back, which is obviously so important. It is why we all tell each other our stories and share our experiences so that we can see similarities and differences and try to learn from each other. And, even though I'm considerably older than you guys, being 46, it doesn't matter with this disease, right? It doesn't matter how old you are or where you're from or what you do. We all deal with a lot of the same stuff and can relate. So I loved having you guys on my podcast.
Yeah, I know I was super grateful to get on there. I was just thinking right now, it's pretty crazy like how cool recovery can be. Like, for instance, Mitch and we've never met in person. We went to the same school. He was sober throughout college, which you heard in his story, but we never met. I was not in recovery in college, so we did not cross paths. Perhaps we might have crossed paths. We still have to compare our transcripts to see if we were ever in the same class.
We had a class senior year, but we didn't talk.
I wasn't quite all there for that one. And obviously Dan, we've never met in person, but the cool thing about like what you're doing in your podcast and what Mitch and I are trying to do is, although we've never met, we have a very intimate bond and connection. I think the three of us, like just by nature of our experiences, and what we've been through and what we can relate, like as you said, what we can relate with each other on in life. And I got to take this a little bit of time to plug the Heron Project a little bit, for putting that together, for giving me the opportunity to speak to you. Listening to Chris talk on your podcast, we were talking a little bit before we started today, and um, even though I've heard Chris speak probably a dozen times, and working with him every day and everything else, hearing him speak, on your podcast, it's like I get something new from him every time. And I think that's like that's the mark of a good speaker. Um, so I was very, very, very grateful and just honored to be on with you. And then, given connecting you and Mitch, it was a really, really cool experience. And I think we're kind of full circle here with you coming on our up and coming podcast. It's just a cool feeling, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about the community, and the relationships you build. You know, Mitch, you touched on like, a couple things in my career that I've done, and we'll get into this a little more later, but it's like I got to travel the world,
Hmm.
and work all kinds of jobs with all kinds of people, whatever. But because I was in active addiction, I really met no one, right?
Hmm.
It's like I didn't form any relationships with anyone that I had worked with. And as many people as I knew, I was so lonely and miserable, felt by myself all the time. And since I've been in recovery, it's like the community, the friendships I've built, the relationships I've built just in it's a year and 8 months now
Hmm.
that I've been
Congratulations.
clean. Thanks. And it's,
Congrats.
I mean, I've made more friends and connected with more people and had more intimate conversations than I had in the first 44 years of my life. It's freaking nuts.
Yeah.
And to touch on the Heron Project, like you just said, Chris, seeing his story when I was in rehab was a game changer for me. Watching what he overcame and where he got to made me realize that it was possible and that there was a life beyond this. It's like I
Hmm.
went into rehab thinking, like so many people do, my life is over,
Over. Yep.
Right.
you know, and watching him, I was like, oh my God, no, it's not. There's like a way better way to do this, and changed my outlook and made me excited to be in rehab from that point forward. Um, so I told him that when he was on my podcast. I thanked him for that. Um, and as you said, I already knew his story, but he managed to blow my mind a few different times in our conversation. It's like I thought I knew what he was going to talk about on my podcast. No, I didn't. Like, he managed to bring up all new kinds of stuff, but it was great, and then getting to meet you guys too. So yeah, like you said, here we are. It's awesome.
Yeah, the full circleness is pretty wild. And at some point, we're gonna have to hit a four-way Zoom where we got everybody in here because I had a similar experience. I was actually it was when my first week in rehab, we had his 30 for 30 on
Mhm.
a video there, and we sat down and watched it like after all our programs at inpatient. And I was like, always loved basketball and saw that, and I was like, oh damn, like that story is insane. Like if he can do it. So it's weird that we've all had a hair in touch to this point. I think that just speaks to him. But um, yeah, I mean, I was looking at your website and you kind of introed it as like, I'm Dan and I'm an ALK, and then there's like a dot, 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 which I loved. But like you were just touching on how you, you kind of didn't make those relationships while you were out there and kind of had this other experience that you were experiencing that might not have been shown to other people for a while. I think that rings true for a lot of us too, kind of staying in that, having your own thing off to the side. But I would love to hear your experience and just start wherever you'd like to start, and we'll shut up for now and listen to you.
All right. Well, I mean, to kind of pick up with what you just said about my experience, it's like I've lived a really a great life. I had so much going for me. I always have. I grew up in a great home. With two wonderful parents, loving parents, supportive parents, four older brothers and sisters, everybody close knit, loved each other, took care of each other. We weren't the perfect family. All families have their stuff, but we were we were great, you know. And you know, that was part of the reason I always looked at it as like I didn't have an excuse to have a problem, a reason to have a problem. You know, it's like everything around me was so good. You know, what did I have to complain about, kind of thing. And I carried that a long way with me. Drinking got involved in my life when I was in high school, like most. And the issue I had was from the very first time I drank, I was to blackout. There was no, you know, easing my way in. The very first time was to blackout, and it basically stayed that way. I either drank till I blacked out or drank till there was nothing left, and that's how high school went. But being the youngest of five kids in my family, you know, my parents, by the time they got to me, they were in this like, all right, listen, if you handle all your responsibilities, you do what you're supposed to do, you can kind of do whatever you want. You know, those were the rules put in front of me. And so I took that and I ran with it. You know, it was like I was captain of my soccer team. I danced at my parents' studio, you know, 4 or 5 days a week. I was an A-B student, you know, so I did all the things that I had to do. I handled my responsibilities. And so I learned that whole work hard, play hard type of mentality. And, you know, that's how I was all the way through high school. And I went to college. I went to NYU, and I was a journalism major, but I was still dancing while I was there, right? So just dancing as a hobby, but I was able to start teaching and make some money while I was in school. And, you know, you got more time on your hands as a college student. So I just started drinking more, right? It was like, that's what I did with my free time was I partied. But I was one of those kids also who hangovers didn't exist. It's like I could party all night long and, like I said, black out, and I could still pop out of bed at 6 a.m. and go to class and go to the gym and go dance and do whatever I had to do. I just shook it off. And that was kind of like a gift and a curse, right? Because it made me think that I was invincible no matter how hard I partied. And I did that, you know, through my first couple of years of college. And then when I got into my later years of college, I started to work as a dancer. I danced on Broadway, in Footloose. I took a semester off and went and did that, and then quit the show and went back because I wanted to finish school. And then my senior year, I started doing award shows for MTV Awards for Britney Spears and things like that. So, you know, all of a sudden it's like I'm still a college student, getting my degree in journalism, like I said. But now I'm on stage at Radio City Music Hall, you know, dancing for Britney Spears on MTV Awards and stuff. It's like I thought I was such hot shit, you know. I thought I ruled the world, and that feeling of invincibility just it grew in me because I was still making so many mistakes, you know, waking up in weird places, forgetting the last 2, 3 hours of the night. But I had no consequences, right? It's like nothing came of it. So I didn't think there was anything wrong with it. So when I graduated, some of the guys that I was working with for Britney Spears and stuff like that said, why don't you come out to LA and give it a shot? And I had never really thought about it, right? Because I never looked more than 2 days ahead in my life, right? It was like I was just partying and having fun and living my life. And so now I had this opportunity. I went to my dad. I said, what do you think? My dad said, why wouldn't you go? You know, give it a shot. Worst case scenario, you come home in 6 months and you can go back to whatever it was you thought you were going to do, which I had no idea, you know. So I said, okay. So I went out to LA, and 5 years later, I was still living there. It was like I didn't come back because my career took off. You know, from like the second, third week I was there, I was dancing in a music video for Pink, and you know my stuff for Britney only grew. and started dancing for other artists too. Within a year, I got into choreography. Now I was choreographing for Britney. Because of those connections, I started choreographing for NSYNC, which was Justin Timberlake and stuff. You guys were too young for NSYNC, I think. But
Hold on, don't
I
put
caught
that
him.
on us. We know
I
who
caught him.
NSYNC is.
so while all this is happening, though, you know, when I got to LA, I found the people that were like me, right? So I found the two people or so who like to go out and get blackout drunk like I did. And that's who my friends were while I was there. So, as much as I was working and meeting a million people in the industry, in the dance world at this point, I wasn't forging any relationships. It's like I was always a big sports fan, and when Sundays would come along and I still wanted to watch the Giant game, being a guy from, New York, New Jersey, it was like there was nobody to invite over to sit and watch a game because I wasn't friends with anybody. So the only guys I could call were those couple of guys who like to get blackout drunk with me, and so they were my friends. And again, I didn't see anything wrong with it. My career is getting better. I'm doing better jobs. Now I'm choreographing, so I'm making more money. And as I said, nothing stopped me. I still got up at 6 o'clock in the morning and went to the gym. And so I was in sick shape, so no one would even question me, right? Like no one ever thought to question me because from the outside, everything looked fantastic. And when I came home, I told everybody, oh, I'm working with this person and that person, and I'm doing this and that. It was like, I lived in Justin Timberlake's house for 3 months while we were choreographing, their concert tour. It's like, that's what I told people. I didn't tell people that when I got there, I would basically lock myself in the room because God forbid I had to have a normal conversation with him. I didn't want that, It's like that opportunity, when I talk about this fortunate life, I had so many opportunities and I didn't make anything of them. It's like, imagine the conversations I could have had with Justin. I don't know. But if I would have gone down into the kitchen and sat there and actually been a normal person, but I didn't do that. I went back to my room and got drunk. And then, something that helped my career and hurt me as a person, the show So You Think You Can Dance came along, and I got hired to be on this show. And, the thought of being on TV and being a television personality, that had never even crossed my mind. Right. And now from the time I got the call till 3 months later, now I'm on TV twice a week with 10 million people watching. And I'm getting recognized walking down the street. And, if I thought I was hot shit before, now I really thought I was hot shit, and the entitlement complex through the roof because now I'm making even more money. So now I'm hanging out at the expensive restaurants and the nice clubs and, bottle service at the tables and doing all this crap thinking, that I was so great. And it's like, I would get the bottle service at the tables and I didn't even remember going home, and, you'd look at, like so many people do. I would wake up and be looking at the phone and the text messages I sent and who the hell was I talking to and what was I doing? No recollection of it, But my couple of boys would be like, dude, last night was amazing, and whatever. And so I just rolled on. And again, never questioned it. And I'll fast forward to when I met my wife. And from the moment I met her, I mean, this was holy shit kind of situation, right? Like I knew, okay, I can't screw this one up. But from 3 months in, she started questioning my drinking. Just after a particularly bad night, she would just kind of be, what were you doing? Like you can't act like that. You can't get that drunk. Like, why are you getting that drunk? And I was so manipulative. I could convince her of, look at everything around me, look how great it is, look how good I'm doing. It's not affecting me, it's not affecting my work, and it'll change. I'll shut it off when I need to shut it off, kind of thing. And I really believed that, right? I really believed that I was young, I was successful, I was living the fast life with celebrities and cool people, and I was traveling the world. Why shouldn't I live like this? Because I'll turn it off when the time comes. So I told her when we got engaged, when we got married, when we got a house, all these different things, that's when it'll change.
Mm.
But it didn't, and after a really bad episode, she really questioned me and threatened to leave, as she should have. And instead of taking stock of where I was at, I'll show her, And so I quit drinking. I quit drinking for like 7 months or something like that. And I started running, and I ran the New York City Marathon.
Mm.
And it was like, I am the picture of health. And what alcoholic can do this? Not for 1 minute did I reflect on why she was questioning me, why I even needed to do this. No, it was all to prove that I was okay.
Mm.
And I just traded addictions, right? I just started running, but I was a miserable shit the whole time. And I was just on a countdown to get through the marathon and to get back to drinking. That's all I was doing, and a week after the marathon, I had my first drink, and 3 weeks later, I was drinking just as much as I was before I quit. And I was right back to where I was. But I convinced her why I was okay. And then we got married, and we bought a house, and she got pregnant. And now I'm going to change. Yes, it's like nothing changed, And then we had kids. Surely I would change once we had kids. And nothing changed. If anything, I think my drinking increased. But sometime in those early years of the kids being around is when I started to sneak, right?
Mhm.
Is when I always had an extra bottle of wine or something stashed, so she didn't quite know how much I was drinking. And you think that would set off an alarm, but it didn't. And I'm traveling now for work. I'm doing So You Think You Can Dance and other talent shows like that in different countries around the world. So I would spend, 2-3 months out of the year on the road. So I'm on my own in hotel rooms, in hotel bars. So now no one can even see, you know. But I managed to keep up appearances, right? It was like I was always fresh faced and ready to go for my shows. So no one ever had a clue. Secretly, I was living in this world of questioning how much I was drinking every night, knowing it was not normal, but dragging myself out of bed before I had to go to work, getting to the gym, sweating it out.
Mm.
So you couldn't smell it, so you couldn't see it. So no one thought anything. The only one that ever knew I had a problem was my wife, because she was watching. She's not stupid. I was like, I can manipulate her and make her think it was okay, but she wasn't blind. And, when I realized I had a problem was when my son was 9 months old. He got very sick and was sent to the hospital. What we thought would be a short hospital visit ended up being a few weeks long. And, the long story short of him was it ended up being an autoimmune disorder, which he was able to outgrow over the, about 4 years or so it took for him to outgrow that. But for those few weeks that he was in there, we didn't know what was wrong with him. And the doctors didn't know what was wrong. And, as a parent, you want to know one thing. He's going to be okay, right? And they couldn't answer that question. When they can't answer that question, You know, it's like you would do anything as a parent to trade places with your kid. But only one parent could stay in the hospital at night.
Yeah.
And I convinced my wife every night that it was more important for her to stay with him because he was more comfortable with her than he was with me. Not knowing what might happen to my son that night in the hospital, if he was even going to make it through, it was more important for me to go home and drink. You know,
Damn.
that didn't stop me, right? It didn't change my drinking habits, but that made me look at myself for the first time because I realized, dude, like you're messed up. These choices you're making now. Luckily, he was okay. He came home and nothing changed, right? My habits continued, even worsened. And basically, you know, over the years that passed is like my career just kept getting better, right? I kept doing more shows, traveling more, making more money. So that entitlement just grew. And so my drinking and everything just went right along with it. And a point came where I said to myself, you know, bro, you're an alcoholic. You know, you have to be, but you must be different. You you figured this shit out. You figured out the magic, you know, of how to live like this because I knew that I was begging for drinks at noon and at 1 o'clock, which by the way, if I could find someone to go to lunch with me, I was happy as could be because I could start earlier that day, right? But I had found a way to drink as much as I wanted all night long and pass out and still get up in the morning and do everything I had to do. Highly functioning. So that's what I thought of myself. You're a highly functioning alcoholic. It's fine. You know, you can live like this. And then, you know, and I do feel like it's important to point out really quick. My wife sat me down like 3 times a year for like 7 years or something like that and would talk to me about being unhappy, you know, and I looked at her like she was fucking nuts. I thought she was crazy because look at everything you have, you know, look at the house and I'm taking us on great vacations and I have beautiful cars for us and I have all of this stuff. And I never once really listened to her and realized all she wanted was for me to be available to her, you know, because I was unavailable every night. It was like at a certain point every night, I went numb, I glazed over, and I was just watching TV and drinking wine, and I just wasn't even there, you know? And so she was lonely, but I never heard that. You know, it was like, I would look at her and be like, give me a break. She's crazy. You know, nothing will make her happy. That's how I looked at it. So, you know, then the pandemic hit and like so many people, like most people, everything was taken away, right? It's like we lost our lives. So my travel got taken away from me. My jobs got taken away from me. Everything that I had built up as like the walls to show everybody how good I was doing. Now that was gone. And I was home and I use the word just. I'm aware of that I'm using the word just, but I was just a dad and just a husband. And I didn't know how to live like that because I couldn't just be myself. You know, it's like I didn't know how to do that. And instead of like trying to stop and take a look and try to figure out and look around and see how awesome my life was, you know, of 2 wonderful, amazing kids, a beautiful, supportive wife, and everything we had built around us, you know, that didn't do it for me. And I just started drinking even more. And within a year into the pandemic, I mean, my drinking went off a cliff. You know, it started earlier and earlier every day until I quickly got to where I was drinking 24 hours a day. from the moment I woke up until I went to sleep. And I was a shell of myself. I went from being the first one up in the house and doing 2 hours of stuff before anybody else got up to being the last one out of bed. My ability to hide anything with working out and doing all that was gone. And my kids, who always kind of looked at me as like their hero, who was always on the move with them, always doing stuff with them. My daughter walked in one morning and I was laying in bed. I looked like hell. I looked as bad as I felt. For the first time in my life, the look on my face was as bad as what was going on inside. And my daughter looked at me terrified. She thought I was going to die, and asked me what was wrong. And I didn't have any answers for her. And my wife was staying in the guest room at this point because she was so disgusted with me. She couldn't stand the sight or smell of me. And, I'd always promised her that I would, as I told you, cut back or quit when we got married, when we bought a house, when we had kids. And none of it took. But when my daughter looked at me that way that morning, I said to myself, I cannot do this to them. I can't be that guy. I'm not going to be that dad. And so I walked in the guest room. I looked at my wife and I said, I need help. I had tried everything, all the tricks, changing what you drink, changing times you drink, all the different stuff, and failed miserably with all of it. And I had given up. I knew I couldn't do it. And I asked her, and I think this sense of relief probably came over her that I was finally admitting I needed help, but she could finally get rid of me out of the house too. Because she was tired of it, and she said, I don't want this around our children. And within about 40 hours, I was in rehab. And the guilt of leaving my family behind, I thought I was abandoning them, even though it was the best thing I could have done for them. The shame of, this is what my life has come to, and then the humiliation of when you first get there and getting strip searched and all that shit. But God, I needed every bit of it, and the first day and a half or so, that guilt and that shame stuck with me. And then I saw the Chris Herron video. I actually started talking to some of the other guys in there. And those next 28 days or whatever were the best days I had lived in years. It was like I had found my people, and was like talking to people and actually having conversations and connecting and being freaking honest. Like someone asked me a question and actually giving them a real answer. And it was like I felt free, and I think, like, I don't think she would admit this, but secretly I looked over there because I'm wondering if my wife is listening to me upstairs right now. But I think she secretly was hoping it was like a little bit of torture, right? For everything I had put her through. But like the first phone call, I was like, this place is awesome. So it was like having this experience of living and sharing and talking and connecting. And yes, obviously everything I learned while I was there, but the biggest thing I was learning was like just how to talk to someone and how to be open and honest. I took away so many things from, I was learning the 12 steps in there and everything, but it was just like I was kind of relearning how to be a person again, how to be a member of society, and I loved every minute of it in there. And it it changed everything for me. It's like that's when my life did a 180 in that month. And I met all these guys in there who were second, third, fourth timers who put their arm around me, which was so weird for me at first, like trying to figure out why did this guy care about me? Why does this guy care about what happens to me?
Right.
But feeling like he really did, you know. And these guys put their arm around me and told me there's no reason I can't be a first time winner. You know, you don't need to come back here. You know, these are the things you need to do, and you can make it work in this life. You know, and so I left that place with the beginnings of, you know, what I needed to do, how I needed to stay focused on my sobriety. And so thankful for those guys, their time, their energy, their care that they gave me. But then I was fortunate enough, you know, when I got out of the car to walk into that place, part of me thought my wife was going to be gone
Mm.
when I came back. And she had every reason to leave. But she was there. She picked me up. And not only was she there, she gave me the support and the understanding of that my sobriety needed to come first. You know, that it didn't matter what time my meetings were at or what time my outpatient stuff was at or whatever. That had to be the priority in my life, even before her and the kids. And she got that, and she gave that freedom to me, so that I could stay on track. You know, because those initial weeks and months when I got out, you know, it was like trying to navigate your way through normal life. Um, you know, that's tough,
Mm.
obviously, but being able to keep everything that kept me sober front and center, made all that possible. You know, and kind of put me on the right track from when I got out of there. And here I am, a year and 8 months now. And you know, they talk about how it only gets better, and I kind of have that like, does it really get better than this?
Mm.
Because I I never thought I could be this happy. So I'm eternally grateful and over the moon happy, and love sitting here and being able to do this. You know, and I haven't gotten to tell this story in a little while, so
Yeah.
getting to sit here and tell it just kind of reminds me of everything and reminds me of how grateful I am for everything I have.
Damn.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. And that
That was a
was crazy
fascinating.
story.
Yeah. That was
Mitch, you
wild.
go ahead. You go ahead, man. I'm collecting
Yeah.
my thoughts over here.
Yeah. That's unreal. You know, I mean, like, um, I can totally see how, you know, and I totally relate to, I didn't have it to the extent, but I totally relate to the like, um, you know, if people were coming to me saying, I think you have an issue or I think you have a problem, and then the pointing outwardly, you know, what do you mean? Look at that, look at that, look at that. You know, I relate to that on like my swimming level and stuff like that. And I can definitely see how if I ever had any sort, even a smidge of fandom, like any or fame being like famous or anything, I mean, you know what I mean? I would have took that and ran with it forever. Um, so I completely hear you on that. And yeah, I mean that's wild. I think that for me, I really wanted to ask you too, is like a year and 8 months sober. And I kind of wanted to ask what kind of propelled you to start doing, you know, what you're doing. Like you know, starting to talk about it in the way that you are, and because, you know, you could have done all this and kept it to yourself, you know. I mean, a lot of people choose to do that.
Mm.
And so I'm always intrigued and always want to hear when it comes to speaking on it, and you go into the next level of having like something where you continuously speak on it. I wanted to see where that kind of grew inside you and how you see that, because I think at least in the current state of recovery and stuff like that, you would still find, and we still have people that kind of, you know, have different opinions on that. So
Yeah, I mean, as I told you, I was able to fool the world. And I was able to fool them even right up to when I went to rehab, right? Nobody thought I had a problem other than my wife. So when I went into rehab, this was like, I'm gonna go, I'm gonna do this, and I'll get out, and no one will ever know. That's how I went in there. But when I realized while I was in there how much of a freaking liar I was about everything. It's like I knew, but man, when I started to unpack it and realize I lied about anything and everything to everyone, um, I started to realize that I won't be able to stay clean if I'm lying about this.
Mm.
You know, if as simple as going to dinner with someone and I have to make up a story as to why I'm not drinking, that's just for me would be, and I'm not saying this needs to be for everybody, for me, that would just be a little bit of a lie, and would build into a bigger lie because I'm so good at just building lie on top of lie on top of lie. And I was able to keep track of them, which was horrifying, and know what I lied to who.
Mm.
So I said, I'm not going to be able to keep doing this the right way if I can't tell people the truth. Now, at that time, I wasn't planning on coming on podcasts and sharing it, but I was at least going to tell my family and my friends, and the people who mattered around me. So that was step one. But then step two was the Chris Herons of the world, and other people, Craig Carton, who's a big radio guy in New York, who's a gambling addict, who goes on the radio and talks about it every week. All these different people who I took so much from, who made all the difference in the world to me in showing, who they were and who they've become, and sharing that gave me so much inspiration and motivation and belief that I could do it too. And I just said, if I can help one person or I can help 100 people because of my platform, because of what I've done, being on television, being a choreographer, and getting to use my story and kind of, maybe just hit home with some of those people, that just made me said, you know what? I'm going to do it. I think it's going to be better for me internally and to keep my mind right if I just put it out there and I know everybody knows. And then if I'm willing to talk to people and maybe help them as well, and that can make a difference. It's like I always was searching for a purpose.
Mm.
I have a gift for communication, right? Which I never used to like to admit, but it's like, that's why I made it on television, right? It's like I had an ability to tell a story and tell it in a short amount of words and maybe hit home with some people. But I always used it as a way to make money, right? I don't know if I was ever using it for actually something good. And I used to talk to my wife about, what am I doing? Like trying to find a reason for what I'm doing. And I said, I could use my gift of communication and maybe help people. And that was kind of it, and I didn't really have a plan. I said, I'll start the podcast and we'll kind of see what's happening. But, like we started this conversation by talking about this community we build. I never knew that I was going to start building this community of friends and sober friends. And I never thought it would come to this point. So who knows what it could grow into, you know? So I'm using it as like today is a bit of a therapy session for me, so it's like I get something from it. And if you guys or some of your listeners can get something from it too, that's awesome. So
I mean, I think it's insane. When I hear your story, right off the bat, there were some things that I could, relate with and identify with, like you being in high school, you being in college, and Mitch, I think you could relate to this too, and this is part of the reason, Mitch, you and I are friends. But like in my use in the beginning and in the middle and whatever, like I I was getting stuff done still. Like I was keeping up appearances. Um, and like Mitch said, when anybody got too close to me and started to say like, what are you doing? Like you're a disaster, really. Like, I pushed them away. Or I would point to all the external things, but no, look at my grades, and no, look at sports, and no, look at this and that and the other thing. And um, one big takeaway I have from what you've been talking about, like today, is like, and that's made me think about my own use and my recovery is like in active use, like I really truly like, and this is not to discount any friendships that I had in recovery, because there were some people who really cared about me, but on my part, like I didn't make friends. Like I didn't have any real friendships that I like forged or that I kept up or put any like effort into. Like, and it's sad to look at that, quite honestly. But the flip side of that is like now, like when you said, how weird it felt when you had some guy just like put his arm around you in treatment and say like, "Hey, you only have to do this once, man. Like you could be one of those guys." Like I can distinctly remember in treatment, similar things happening to me, and my defenses being so built up and my like own insecurity being so high that I was like, what does this guy want from me?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
what's this guy's angle? Like, what is this guy's out to get me. He wants me to, he wants to F me over pretty much. Was my immediate thought. And all I can think of is like when you're sharing is like when that moment and that process of beginning to let people in is such a beautiful thing. Like, and it's like a vulnerability thing, but it also, when it starts to happen, I don't know if you want to speak on it, but it just feels like it feels really good. Like to let someone know. And also how you say like with your podcast and everything you're doing, like there are no questions. Like Dan Karaty is in recovery. Like, hello everyone, this is me. Like, and that's so fucking freeing.
Mm.
Like, because I don't have to lie anymore. Like, there's no individual on earth that I have to say like, oh no, I'm not drinking tonight because I have like I got an early workout tomorrow or anything. Like, no, it's like I'm an alcoholic. I'm in recovery, and this is how it is.
yeah.
Like, I don't know,
And,
man.
no, well, to your point, it's like I missed the chance. When I look back over my life, it's like I've gotten to do so much amazing stuff and go to places and meet people and everything. But like I missed it, right? Because I didn't connect with any place or with anyone, unfortunately. In an effort to not look back on all of it in regret, it's like I go out of my way now to try to connect. And the best part about it, like you said, from that guy putting his arm around me to a mom I met on the sideline at my daughter's soccer practice last night, right? Because my story's out there, people open up to me in a way that is unbelievable.
Hmm.
And when I was in active addiction, I mean, the way this lady opened up to me, if she opened up to me that way before, I would have been like, the hell is wrong with this lady? And I would have ended the conversation so fast. That woman needed to talk,
Mm.
right? She was looking for someone to talk to, but I would have found my way out of that conversation in 30 seconds.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, I was really good at that too, right? I ended up sitting there and talking to her about, something going on in her life. And I think I made a difference. And whether I made a difference or not, it's like she needed to get something off her chest. She got it off her chest, you know? And it's like just what you do for people, what people do for me and what I can do for them, because you're just open and you're willing, is it's insane. You know, it's how we should be, you know.
Yeah. I completely agree with that. It's kind of like I've kind of been higher powered out recently, and I kind of see it as like, you know, when you have those interactions with people, when you allow yourself to speak like that, have kind of have your higher power speak through you to them, you know. It's kind of like an experience that we didn't really have when we were using and drinking, you know. That's those type of genuine things, like you were saying. I would shut that down and run from that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Not interested in that. And like to what Andrew was saying a little bit, just like anyone that said I had a problem, well, I'm going to figure out how I don't have to run into you again, because that's a direct conflict to me. But I loved what you said about how, and it was hard to listen to, you know, when you're talking about your kids and your daughter coming into your room. And I think I might have mentioned this when I came and spoke on yours, but I'm a big proponent of this because people think that you need to have, and you spoke to this, like all these wild consequences to get to that bottom, you know. You would have thought that you needed to be fired, you know, multiple times, and, you know, everything was had to be on fire for you to try to stop. But that's not what you said, you know, and that's not what you experienced. It's that bottom is when you decided to change. You know what I mean? It doesn't necessarily mean that you needed to lose or have all these devastating consequences. And I really heard you when you said that. I can see how that would be something where it was like, as a father, you know, and I'm obviously not there yet, but I can see how that would do it. You know what I mean? And you had all those experiences prior of, and I can relate to you know, I'm going to stop now. I'm going to stop now. I'm going to stop now. But that's amazing. And it sounds like you're blessed, like your family is blessed, and your wife is like, you know, the greatest ever, man. I
Oh
mean,
God.
Kudos to your wife.
yeah,
Yeah, man. You ain't
yeah,
kidding.
yeah.
You ain't kidding. I mean, it's like I knew, I told you, I think I mentioned this when I was talking. Like when I met her, I knew. Like I was like,
Yeah,
I don't screw this one up, you know. But I never would have thought I would have taken it to the degree I took it to, you know. And she's still stuck. She's still stuck, you know, which is insane. I mean, I'm beyond blessed and fortunate for that. You know what you're saying about, you know, with the kids and stuff, and you know what your bottom needs to be or not be, or you know, I could have continued easily continued down the road I was going for another 10 or 15 years and still functioned, and everything would have been, you know, status quo. It would have been okay. Um, but I would have woken up one day and my kids wouldn't be kids anymore,
mm,
and I would have missed their childhoods, you know. And I don't think I would have ever forgiven myself for that, you know, because what I get to experience with them now on a daily basis is off the charts. It's being here with them, and they don't even know, right? They can't articulate what's different, but just the way they're on me
yeah,
and in it with me, they know, you know, dad's different.
yeah,
Um, and I wouldn't have been that guy, you know, and I would have never gotten over that, because I would have missed how beautiful, you know, having kids is, you know.
mm,
And I told you, like in active addiction, I still thought of myself as super dad because I still did a ton of things with my kids. I took them everywhere. I did everything with them. But you know, I use the same example every time because it's the one that like shines on me the hardest. Is like my son loves to fish, right? And um, I would take him fishing all the time. I hate fishing, right? It's like I want nothing to do with it. I think it's disgusting. But my son loves it, so I would take him all the time. But And I would make sure that I took a picture with my phone and I'd put it on Instagram so that everybody could see super dad taking his son fishing today, you know?
Mm.
But then I'd go sit on the other end of the dock and have a few drinks
Mm.
while he fished. And I wasn't there with him, you know? When he finished, we packed up his shit and we went home. And that was it. Now I go sit on the dock with him, and the conversations we have and the things he teaches me about fishing and just the shit that happens, you can't write memories like that, you know? It's stuff that I'll remember forever. And I think he'll really appreciate when he gets older, because they're just like really special times that we spend together, you know? And that's the difference. It's like, yeah, I could have been the dad that dropped him off to fish and picked him up, you know, but what are we getting out of that,
Mm.
you know? And now it's like we get the most out of those opportunities.
Right.
Yeah.
It's,
I,
it's like you said, like when we drink, when we use drugs, we settle for less. Like even if we're there, even if we can check the box, like we know that we're leaving something to be desired. Like, mm, um, I know we got to wrap up soon, but just real quick, one memory of yours that will always stick with me now, now that you've told it, and it like highlights the insanity of this disease. Is you literally staying at Justin Timberlake's house and locking yourself in the guest room so that you can drink in peace. Like that's that's insane. Like that is a perfect example of of insanity. Like here you are, you're an up and coming choreographer, dancer, like with this unbelievably talented artist that you're working with. Like what an opportunity to collaborate and everything else. And it's like, no, the disease is like, no, you need to be alone right now and you need to drink. And that's the way it has to be.
Yeah. And that'll make you happy.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah. It was wild. But I wanted to ask. I had two more quick questions for you before we head out. And I guess like for me, and we were talking about how you said like you needed this today. It's kind of like a therapy session. Andrew and I always say that even every time we jump on, it's like an AA meeting. Like this is
Hmm.
just an hour-long meeting. That's all it is. And as long as we stay true to that, it's all good. But from speaking with someone else that goes on and posts it in this way, I wanted to or ask you about like how you feel about, because all three of us, I think we have that ego is right there, you know what I mean, and we're trying to wear away that self-will and ego. And so for us, we've been always trying to check, like, am I doing this for this, or am I doing like, is this sneakily that? And I'm curious to see your thoughts and like your take on that, because I feel like that's something that we have to grapple with. And I've had millions of conversations at this point to like, even when I'm posting anything, it's like, I really have to make sure that it's not something else sneaking back in, but yeah.
Yeah. I think I question myself at least, once a day,
Yeah.
with something I'm posting on social, or someone I'm trying to find for my podcast, a guest I'm trying to lock in or something like that. And I say, are you doing this for the right reason? You know, and I remind myself that there's nothing wrong with it being rewarding.
Mm.
It's like before, the work I was doing in television and in choreography and stuff, it was all about look at me, look at me. I wanted everyone to see, look at who I'm working with, and let me show you my beautiful car that I'm driving because of how much money I'm making from that and whatever. It was all the wrong reasons. It wasn't about the beauty of the work I was doing, the opportunity, the
Yeah.
journey of the work. It was just like, look what I got from it. Right. And I feel like on this, it's rewarding that what I can do on a daily basis can maybe help other people, and it's helping me in the process. And it's about the posts and all of that are about sharing the journey.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what we're all on, right? We're all on this journey. There's no end game here. The journey and the goal is just to stay sober, you know, and maybe pull some other people along with us. And the more I can blast that out there, I'm not going to feel bad for.
Yeah.
I'm going to push it out there as much as I can.
Love that.
But I also do feel like it's important to do just as much in silence,
Yeah.
you know, for yourself, or just your buddies, you know, who you talk to on a daily basis. And it's like all those sober friends that I just sit and text with during the day and stuff.
Yeah.
I love that stuff. And that's for me and for me only.
I love that. I completely agree with you. And just my one final question to that is, like, we hear a lot. I've heard a lot. My home group that's on Tuesdays is a lot of older gentlemen typically that to talk about kids and families and family relations. So I've been getting the crash course on that and what's to come for me. But I know, like, there's the guys that talk about like getting sober for their family and for their kids initially, and I completely understand that sentiment. I think I did that too. I got sober for like my mom or my team or my friends, and because everyone wouldn't get off my ass for it in the in the beginning, and then it progressed more into loving myself and getting sober for myself. So, could you speak to where you are on that sort of development? How you think you've gotten to a place where you have put your recovery in terms of you recovering for you first?
Yeah. So 100%, I went to rehab for my wife and kids, right? I looked at it as my life is over. I'll never have fun again. This is it. You know, you're putting yourself aside and you're going to do this for them and live a boring life, but you'll take care of them.
Yeah.
And that's what I thought, you know, and I couldn't have been more wrong, because I didn't know the person that I was going to become, you know. I mean, that they get to reap the rewards of this is fantastic, but I'm doing this for me now,
Oh, yeah.
right? It's how I feel when I wake up in the morning. There's nothing like it. You know, I haven't felt this way since I was a kid, and I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. So, you know, I don't know what's going to happen in my life, what kind of, you know, disappointments I'm going to have moving forward, or, you know, things I'm going to grieve, or, you know, losses of family members, or, you know, it's going to happen. That's life, you know, but knowing how I can handle it and how I will handle it sober is for me, and the people around me will just reap the rewards of that. I do this for me now because I'm better. I like me like this.
Yeah.
I hated the other guy.
Yeah.
Hated him and ran from him. You know, this guy I'm good with.
I love to hear that.
It's awesome, man.
Amazing.
So I got a quick question as we wrap it up. What's your sober date?
May 12th, 2011.
2011?
I'm sorry, 221.
You tried to throw 10 years on there, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
This man's had 10 years to this.
I was thinking of my daughter's
what?
birthday, 2011. Yeah.
May 11th?
May 12th.
May 12th, 2021. Mitch, everything's a competition, right?
Maybe, yeah.
I got him beat by like 12 days.
Oh, do you really?
Sorry,
You had to
I
throw
have
that
be
in
an
there.
a-
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
so much serious stuff, and I have to be an asshole a little bit, you know.
No,
I'm
man,
sorry.
I like it. I like
That's so
it.
funny.
As soon as you said a year and 8 months, like 30 minutes ago, that's what I've been like, when's this damn sober date?
Oh, man. Oh, that's awesome.
Some things don't change.
No, they don't.
That's
That's
amazing.
good, man. That's good. But you know, what was funny? I just when you guys came on my podcast, you know, like there's so many things like I knew you would relate to talking about like still functioning and still doing things. So you're pointing outwardly, whatever, because when you guys shared with me, you guys, I knew, you know, when you guys shared your stuff, I was like, yeah, I get that. I get that, you
Mm.
know. It's amazing how much you can allow yourself to fake it, you know, and just look at all this stuff that I'm doing, you know, as opposed to have to look at yourself, you know. And it's like, you know, like when you talk about competition, it's like it's funny when you look at now like your competition is your sober date, as opposed to, you know, the crap we used to look at before of like, yeah, well, I'm doing more than
How
this
many
guy
beers
did,
I
or I'm
can
doing
drink?
better than that guy did, you know.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, and it's crazy. Like you said, you know, the more we fake it, the more I hated myself and the further away I got from who I really was, and the less I even knew who I really was. So
Amen to that.
it's beautiful to know who I am today and to know I'm still a competitive son of a bitch.
hell yeah, man, you gotta be. You know,
Yeah.
you're not giving up your drive, you know. You're
Uh-uh.
not giving up who you are. You're bringing more of that guy out, you know.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah, this
for
has
sure.
been awesome. This has been awesome.
Yeah.
It's been a therapy session for me just listening to you.
Yeah, my day's off to an amazing start. I can't thank you enough for coming on. You're an inspiration, man, for real. Like just what you're doing. And I know I've been saying this, but I can't thank you enough, sincerely for talking how you talk and doing what you do. And a year and 8 months is fucking amazing. And to be where you're at a year and 8 months is a testament to your hard work and how seriously you're taking this. You know, that's something to make note of. And I can just see when you're talking, you know, there's some people that have that light. You know, there's a guy talking last night and he just like lit up the room when he talked for 10 minutes. And, you know, there's and you know what I mean when I say people like that. So
Mhm.
thank you for sharing that with us. For real.
Absolutely, guys. I really appreciate you having me on, and we'll have to do more of this.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I can't believe you guys haven't met in person. I think I don't know when, but somewhere along the way, we're going to have to figure out how to actually meet face to face.
Yeah.
We will. We
That would be
will.
amazing. We will. It's coming. You know, we're slow and steady out here.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
all good, man.
Um, But yeah, thank you again. And thank you for everyone tuning in to the PMR podcast. This is episode 21. We can't wait to drop this one. And yeah, what do you think, Andrew? We'll keep coming back.
I'll keep coming back. Check out If I'm Being Honest on Spotify.
Oh, yeah, if I'm being honest. Yep, check that
Thanks,
out.
Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.